The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, and neither had the eviction notices. Marcus Chen stared at the soggy envelope in his trembling hands, his 6-year-old daughter Lily's laughter echoing from their soon-to-be former apartment. Across town, Victoria Sterling signed another multi-million-dollar contract in her glass tower, surrounded by everything money could buy, except the one thing that had been slowly killing her. When desperation meets loneliness, two broken souls are about to discover that sometimes the most unexpected arrangements can save you both. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The rain drummed against the windows of the 42nd floor like impatient fingers. Victoria Sterling didn't look up from the contract spread across her mahogany desk, though the sound had been her only companion for the past 3 hours. The signature flowed from her pen in practiced strokes. Another acquisition. Another victory. Another empty evening ahead. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Miss Sterling? The car is waiting downstairs." Victoria glanced at her Patek Philippe. 7:15. She'd missed dinner again. Not that anyone was waiting. "Cancel it, Sarah. I'll drive myself tonight. But the charity gala. Send my regrets and a check." The usual amount. The silence that followed was familiar. Sarah had learned, over 4 years, when not to push. Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics, the woman who'd turned her father's failing construction company into a billion-dollar empire, didn't explain herself to anyone. The elevator descended in smooth silence, carrying her toward the parking garage and another solitary drive to her penthouse. Through the glass walls, the city sprawled below a constellation of lights, each one representing someone with somewhere to be, someone to see. Victoria touched the steering wheel of her Tesla and felt the familiar hollowness settle in her chest. Success, it turned out, was a magnificent insulator. It kept out failure, poverty, and uncertainty. It also kept out warmth. 23 miles away, Marcus Chen was learning that eviction notices came in threes. The first had been a warning. The second, a final demand. The third sat on his kitchen counter like a tombstone, water damaged from the leak in the ceiling that his landlord refused to fix. "Daddy, can we have mac and cheese again?" Lily stood in the doorway of their cramped studio apartment, her dark hair pulled into lopsided pigtails. She was 6, small for her age, with eyes that still believed the world was fundamentally good. Marcus intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. "Of course, baby girl." He folded the eviction notice and slipped it into his back pocket. "Why don't you set up the TV tray?" Their routine was practiced. Marcus boiled water on the hot plate, while Lily arranged their mismatched plates and napkins on the folding table they'd rescued from a garage sale. The apartment was tiny, 500 square feet, that somehow felt both cramped and hollow. But it was theirs. Had been theirs. In 3 days, it wouldn't be. "Is it still raining?" Lily pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Looks like it. I like the rain. It makes everything clean." Marcus stirred the pasta and wondered when his 6-year-old had become the optimist in the family. 2 years ago, when Sarah left, Lily had cried for weeks. Now she spoke about fresh starts and silver linings with the casual wisdom of someone who'd learned to find joy in small things. His phone buzzed against the counter. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Marcus Chen?" The voice was professional, clipped. "You responded to a posting on Care.com?" Marcus's heart jumped. He'd been applying to nanny positions for weeks, anything that might come with housing, anything that might keep them together. "Yes, that's me. This is Sarah Mitchell. I work for someone who's looking for live-in childcare. Are you still available?" Yes, absolutely." He lowered his voice, glancing toward Lily. "Can you tell me about the position?" "It's unique. My employer is very private, very particular. The compensation is substantial, but the requirements are specific. Do you have time to meet tomorrow?" Marcus looked around their apartment at the water stains spreading across the ceiling, at the eviction notice peeking from his pocket, at his daughter, who deserved so much more than this. "I have time." Victoria stood in her kitchen, staring at a refrigerator full of takeout containers she'd never opened. The granite countertops reflected the city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything was pristine, untouched, cold. She poured herself a glass of wine, a 2015 Burgundy that cost more than most people made in a month, and wandered to the living room. The space was perfect, photographed for Architectural Digest 2 years ago. A study in minimalist luxury, they'd called it. What they hadn't mentioned was how sound echoed in rooms with no soft edges, how footsteps rang hollow on polished floors. Her phone sat silent on the glass coffee table. It had been silent for most nights, for most years. Business calls came during business hours. Personal calls. Victoria couldn't remember the last personal call. She'd built her empire systematically, methodically, while her competitors played golf and networked at cocktail parties. She studied blueprints and crunched numbers. While they delegated, she learned every aspect of construction, from foundation pours to finish carpentry. The company her father left behind was drowning in debt and bad decisions. The company she'd built was featured on the cover of Fortune. The wine was excellent. She drank it alone, as always. The laptop glowed on the side table, emails waiting, contracts to review, an empire that demanded constant attention. But tonight, for reasons she couldn't name, Victoria found herself opening a different tab. Care.com. The website looked foreign on her screen, populated with smiling faces and testimonials about finding the perfect nanny, the ideal companion. Companion. The word stuck in her throat like something sharp. She'd hired housekeepers, personal assistants, drivers, professional relationships with clear boundaries and specific duties. But companionship that was different. That implied need, vulnerability, the admission that success hadn't been enough. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The cursor blinked in the search bar, waiting. Victoria Sterling, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation, couldn't bring herself to type what she was looking for. Marcus tucked Lily into the pull-out sofa that served as her bed. The springs squeaked, but she didn't complain. She never complained. "Tell me about tomorrow," she whispered. It was their ritual. Every night, she asked about tomorrow, and he painted pictures of small adventures, trips to the library, walks in the park, mac and cheese with extra cheese. Tonight, the words felt heavier. Tomorrow, Daddy has a job interview. A good one? Maybe. A family needs help taking care of things. Like how I take care of you, but for someone else. Lily considered this, her thumb finding its way to her mouth, a habit she'd never quite outgrown. Will they be nice to you? I hope so, baby girl. If they're not nice, we'll find someone else, right? Marcus smoothed her hair, dark like his own, fine like her mother's. Right. We'll figure it out together. She smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, her small body relaxing into sleep. Marcus sat beside her in the dark, listening to the rain against the windows and the distant hum of traffic. His laptop was balanced on a stack of books on the floor. He opened it carefully, the screen casting blue light across their tiny space. The email from Sarah Mitchell was brief, professional. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Sterling Dynamics Building, 42nd floor. Ask for Sarah at reception. Dress professionally. This is a unique opportunity. Sterling Dynamics. Marcus knew the name impossible not to, in a city where their cranes dotted the skyline like mechanical birds. Victoria Sterling was a legend, the kind of person featured on magazine covers and business school case studies. The idea that someone like that might need his help seemed impossible. But impossible was all he had left. He spent the next hour researching, reading articles about the company, about Victoria Sterling herself. The photos showed a woman in her early 30s, beautiful in a sharp, untouchable way. Dark hair pulled back severely, suits that probably cost more than his rent, eyes that looked through the camera rather than at it. The articles painted a picture of ruthless efficiency, of a woman who'd taken over her father's company at 25, and transformed it into an industry leader. They mentioned her business acumen, her strategic mind, her ability to see potential where others saw only problems. They didn't mention friends, family, personal life. It was as if Victoria Sterling existed only in conference rooms and boardrooms, a brilliant mind in an expensive suit with no life beyond the empire she'd built. Marcus closed the laptop and looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully, despite the uncertainty surrounding them. Whatever this job was, whoever Victoria Sterling really was, he had to try. For Lily, he had to try everything. The rain continued its steady percussion against the windows. In a few hours, it would be dawn, and then afternoon, and then he'd find himself on the 42nd floor of a building that touched the sky, asking a stranger for salvation. He settled back against the couch, one hand resting on Lily's shoulder, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. But tonight, they were still together, still fighting, still hoping. The rain washed the world clean, and somewhere in its rhythm, Marcus found the courage to believe that sometimes impossible things happen to ordinary people. The Sterling Dynamics building pierced the afternoon sky like a blade of glass and steel. Marcus stood on the sidewalk 42 stories below, craning his neck to find the top, feeling smaller than he had since childhood. His one good suit, navy blue, purchased for job interviews that had led nowhere, felt tight across his shoulders. Lily was at Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment down the hall, probably coloring at the kitchen table and asking 1,000 questions about where Daddy had gone and when he'd be back. He'd promised her ice cream if the interview went well, though the $23 in his wallet would make that a challenge. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and chrome, designed to inspire awe and intimidation in equal measure. Marcus's reflection multiplied in polished surfaces as he approached the reception desk, where a woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile waited. Marcus Chen for Sarah Mitchell. 42nd floor. The elevator banks are to your right. The elevator rose so smoothly, Marcus barely felt the movement, just the subtle pressure in his ears as floors flicked by on the digital display. 30, 35, 40, 42. The doors opened onto a reception area that belonged in a museum. Original artwork lined the walls, pieces Marcus recognized from art history classes he'd taken a lifetime ago, when he thought he might become a teacher instead of a struggling single father. A woman in her 50s rose from behind a desk that looked carved from a single piece of black walnut. "Mr. Chen? I'm Sarah Mitchell." Her handshake was firm, professional. She wore the kind of clothing that whispered expense, rather than shouting at understated elegance that came from confidence rather than display. "Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice. Of course. Please, follow me." She led him down a hallway, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below them, a living map of ambition and struggle. Marcus caught glimpses of the neighborhood where he and Lily lived, somewhere in the distant sprawl of smaller buildings and narrow streets. "Before we go in," Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. "I need you to understand that this position is unconventional. Miss Sterling has very specific needs and very particular expectations. The compensation reflects that. I understand. Do you?" Her eyes were kind but searching. "Mr. Chen, this isn't just about childcare. Miss Sterling is looking for someone who can be present, available, committed in a way that goes beyond typical employment." Marcus thought about the eviction notice in his back pocket, about Lily asking why they had to move again, about the stack of rejection letters on his kitchen counter. "I'm listening." Sarah studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "The salary is $200,000 annually. Housing is provided, a fully furnished apartment in Miss Sterling's building, separate entrance, complete privacy, health insurance, education fund, 2 weeks paid vacation." The numbers didn't make sense. Marcus had been applying for positions that paid $30,000, maybe $40,000 if he was lucky. $200,000 was life-changing money. Suspicious money. What would I be doing exactly? taking care of Miss Sterling's daughter. The words hit him like cold water. In all his research, he'd found no mention of Victoria Sterling having children. No family photos in magazine spreads. No references to motherhood in any article he'd read. I wasn't aware she had a daughter. Most people aren't. Miss Sterling values privacy above almost everything else. Sarah's expression softened slightly. The little girl is 5 years old. Adopted. She's been through difficulties. She needs someone patient. Someone kind. Someone who understands what it means to protect a child. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. What kind of difficulties? That's something Miss Sterling will discuss with you herself, if she decides to hire you. They stopped before a set of double doors made from what looked like solid mahogany. Sarah knocked twice, waited for a response, then opened the door. Miss Sterling? Marcus Chen is here. Victoria stood with her back to the door, looking out at the city through walls of glass. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. She didn't turn around immediately. Thank you, Sarah. Please close the door. Marcus found himself alone with one of the most powerful women in the city, in a room larger than most apartments. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic 42 floors below. When Victoria finally turned around, Marcus was surprised by how young she looked. The magazine photos had captured her professional persona sharp, untouchable, intimidating. In person, without the barrier of a camera lens, she seemed almost fragile. Beautiful, certainly, but carrying a weight that expensive clothes and perfect makeup couldn't quite hide. Sit down, please. Marcus took the chair across from her desk, acutely aware of the distance between them, not just physical, but economic, social, existential. She belonged here, in this glass tower, with original art and handcrafted furniture. He belonged in a studio apartment with water stains and an eviction notice. Sarah tells me you have a daughter. Yes, Lily. She's 6. What happened to her mother? The question was direct, unpadded with politeness. Marcus appreciated that, somehow. It felt more honest than small talk. She left 2 years ago, said being a mother wasn't what she thought it would be. Victoria nodded, as if she understood something about disappointment. About people failing to be what you needed them to be. And you've been managing alone since then? We've been managing together. The distinction felt important. Lily's not a burden. She's my partner in this. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Partners are rare. She moved to the window again, her silhouette sharp against the dying light. Marcus waited, sensing that patience was being tested along with everything else. I adopted Emma 8 months ago, Victoria said finally. She'd been in the system for 3 years. Multiple placements. All of them. Unsuccessful. The social workers called her challenging. Difficult to place. Marcus heard something in her voice, protective, fierce, the way his own voice sounded when he talked about Lily. She's 5 years old, and she doesn't trust anyone. She barely speaks. The last family returned her after 2 weeks because she wouldn't bond with them. Victoria's hands were pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the window slightly. They returned her like a defective product. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with pain and anger. What does she need? Victoria turned back to face him. And Marcus saw something he recognized, the same desperate love he carried for Lily, the same willingness to do anything, be anything, sacrifice everything for a child who'd already been hurt too much. She needs someone who won't leave. Someone who understands that healing takes time, that trust is earned in small moments, not grand gestures. Someone who knows what it means to choose a child over everything else. Marcus thought about the eviction notice, about the nights he'd gone hungry so Lily could have seconds, about the job interviews he'd bombed because he couldn't afford decent clothes or reliable childcare. I understand. Do you? Victoria moved closer, her eyes searching his face. Because this isn't just about Emma. I travel constantly. Board meetings, site visits, negotiations that can't be postponed. Emma would be your primary responsibility, but you'd also be present, available, part of our household. There was something in the way she said, household, that made Marcus pause. Not family, that would have implied something warmer, more connected. Household was business. Household was an arrangement. You'd live in the apartment below mine. Victoria continued. Emma would stay with you when I'm away, which is often. When I'm home, we'd figure out the rhythms. But she'd be your responsibility primarily. Marcus found himself thinking about Lily, about how much she'd love having another little girl around, about the education fund, and health insurance, and the apartment, with presumably no water stains or broken heating. What about my daughter? Victoria paused, as if she'd forgotten this complication. She'd live with you, of course. I assume that's non-negotiable. It is. Then it's settled. The apartment has 2 bedrooms. Emma might benefit from having another child around. Actually, someone closer to her own age. It was happening too fast. Marcus felt like he was watching his life change from outside his body, unable to keep up with the speed of transformation. Miss Sterling, I need you to understand something. I don't know anything about being a nanny for wealthy families. I don't have training in child psychology or special needs. I'm just a father who's trying to keep his family together. Victoria studied him for a long moment. Her expression unreadable. That's exactly why I want to hire you. The contract was 17 pages long, dense with legal language that made Marcus's head spin. Sarah had given him a conference room to review it privately, along with a bottle of water and the offer of coffee that he'd been too nervous to accept. $200,000 annually. Housing provided. Health insurance that covered everything, including dental and vision. An education fund that would ensure both girls could go to any college they wanted. All he had to do was take care of a 5-year-old girl who'd been hurt by the adults who were supposed to protect her, and be available to a woman who'd built walls so high she needed to hire someone to live inside them. There were clauses about confidentiality, about discretion, about maintaining professional boundaries. There were detailed schedules and emergency procedures and protocols for everything from sick days to family visits. What there wasn't was any warmth, any sense that this would be more than a business arrangement. Marcus would be an employee, not a friend. A service provider, not part of a family. But Lily would be safe. Fed, housed, educated, cared for. She'd have health insurance, and a college fund, and a bedroom that didn't leak when it rained. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Lily is asking when you're coming home. Should I start dinner? Marcus looked out the conference room window at the city below, at the neighborhoods where rent was cheaper and dreams were smaller, where his daughter was waiting for him to come home with good news or bad news, or any news that might tell her what their future looked like. He signed his name on 17 pages, his signature getting smaller and more careful with each repetition, as if he could control the magnitude of what he was agreeing to by making the letters tiny. When he finished, Sarah was waiting outside the conference room. Miss Sterling would like to meet your daughter, she said. If you're comfortable with that. Perhaps tomorrow evening? Marcus nodded, though comfortable wasn't the word he'd use. Nothing about this felt comfortable. It felt necessary, life-saving, terrifying. There's one more thing. Sarah's voice was gentler now, almost maternal. Emma doesn't know about the arrangement yet. Miss Sterling wanted to make sure you'd accept the position before introducing the idea of change. The little girl has had enough disappointment. Marcus thought about Lily's resilience, her ability to find joy in small things, her trust that Daddy would figure everything out. Then he tried to imagine a 5-year-old who'd learned not to trust, not to hope, not to believe that adults meant what they said. How do we help her? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since he'd entered the building, Marcus felt like he'd said something right. I think you already know. Lily pressed her nose against the window of the taxi as they pulled up to Victoria's building. The glass tower reflected the evening sky, all pink and gold from the setting sun, and she traced patterns in the condensation her breath left on the window. "It's so tall, Daddy. Do you think it touches the clouds?" Marcus adjusted his grip on her small hand. He'd spent 20 minutes that morning explaining that they were meeting someone important, someone who might give Daddy a new job that came with a new apartment and a little girl for Lily to be friends with. He'd tried to keep it simple, age-appropriate, hopeful without being dishonest. What he hadn't told her was that his stomach felt like it was full of broken glass, or that he'd barely slept, or that everything they owned was packed into 3 garbage bags in their soon-to-be former apartment. "Maybe," he said. "Should we go find out?" The lobby felt even more intimidating with Lily beside him. She was small, dark-haired, wearing her best dress, a blue cotton thing with tiny flowers that she'd outgrown but refused to give up. Next to the marble and chrome and expensively dressed people moving through the space like they belonged there, she looked impossibly young and out of place. But she wasn't intimidated. That was the thing about Lily. She had an unshakable belief that the world was fundamentally good, that new places held adventure rather than danger, that adults generally meant well, even when they made mistakes. Marcus envied her certainty. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was quiet, except for Lily's whispered counting as the numbers changed. 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. "We're so high up, Daddy. We must be able to see everything from here." Sarah was waiting when the doors opened, but this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Victoria Sterling, and next to Victoria, holding her hand with the careful grip of someone who'd learned not to trust, but was trying anyway, was a little girl, Emma. She was smaller than Marcus had expected, with pale skin and light brown hair that hung in her face like a curtain. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Marcus's rent, but she held herself like she was trying to disappear inside it. Her eyes, large and dark and too serious for a 5-year-old, darted between Marcus and Lily, with the wariness of someone who'd learned to assess strangers for potential harm. "Lily," Marcus said gently, "this is Miss Sterling and Emma." Lily stepped forward with the confidence of someone who'd never met a stranger she couldn't charm. "Hi. I'm Lily Chen, and I'm 6 years old, and I like your dress, Emma. It's really pretty." Emma didn't respond, just pressed closer to Victoria's side. But her eyes stayed on Lily, curious despite herself. Victoria's voice was softer than it had been in their interview, carefully modulated for small ears. "Hello, Lily. Emma and I are very glad to meet you. Are you really tall because you live so high up?" Lily tilted her head back to look at Victoria. "My daddy says tall buildings make people feel important, but I think maybe they just make you closer to the birds." Marcus felt his cheeks burn. But Victoria's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "I think you might be right about the birds," Victoria said. "Would you like to see the view?" She led them down the hallway to her office, Emma trailing behind like a small, wary shadow. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of copper and rose gold. Lily pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, her breath fogging the glass. "Wow, you really can see everything. Emma, look, you can see the whole world from here." Emma approached the window slowly, as if the glass might break if she got too close. When she finally stood beside Lily, they were almost the same height. Emma was a year younger, but taller, all sharp angles and careful movements. "That's where we live." Lily pointed toward the distant sprawl of smaller buildings. "See that red building? We're right next to it." "Well, we were. Daddy says we're moving somewhere new soon." Marcus watched Victoria watching the girls, saw something shift in her expression as Emma took a small step closer to the window, drawn despite herself by Lily's unguarded enthusiasm. "Moving can be scary," Emma said quietly. Her voice was so soft Marcus almost missed it. "Sometimes," Lily agreed. "But Daddy says, moving just means you get to have adventures in new places. And maybe make new friends." She turned to Emma with the directness that only children possessed. "Do you want to be friends?" I don't have any friends who live in buildings that touch the clouds. Emma looked up at Victoria, seeking permission or reassurance, or escape. Marcus couldn't tell which. Victoria's hand found the little girl's shoulder, a gentle touch that seemed to say, "You're safe. You can choose. I won't let anything bad happen." Maybe, Emma whispered. Maybe is good, Lily said, with the wisdom of someone who understood that not everyone was ready to trust immediately. Maybe means yes later, when you're ready. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Whatever Emma had been through, whatever had made her so careful and quiet, Lily seemed to instinctively understand. She stepped back from the window, giving Emma space, but stayed close enough that the offer of friendship remained open. "Miss Sterling." Sarah appeared in the doorway. "I have the apartment keys whenever you're ready for the tour." Victoria nodded, then looked at Marcus. "Would you like to see where you'd be living?" The apartment was on the 39th floor, 3 floors below Victoria's office and 4 floors below her penthouse. Sarah used a keycard to access a private hallway that Marcus hadn't known existed, a residential section hidden within the commercial building, like a secret world. "Each floor has only 2 units," Sarah explained as they walked. "Very private, very secure. Miss Sterling owns both apartments on this floor. You'd have this one, and she uses the other for business guests occasionally." The door opened onto a space that made Marcus's current apartment look like a closet. Hardwood floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same breathtaking city view. The furniture was modern but comfortable. A sectional sofa that could easily seat 8 people, a dining table that could host dinner parties Marcus would never throw. 2 bedrooms. Sarah continued the tour. 2.5 bathrooms, full kitchen, washer and dryer in the utility room. The building has a gym, a rooftop garden, and 24-hour concierge service. Lily had disappeared into one of the bedrooms, her voice echoing back to them. "Daddy! Daddy, come look! This room is bigger than our whole apartment." Marcus followed her voice and found her standing in the middle of a room that was indeed larger than their entire current living space. A queen-sized bed sat against one wall, flanked by nightstands that looked like they belonged in a boutique hotel. The walk-in closet was the size of most people's bedrooms. "This would be your room," Victoria said from the doorway. "Emma's room is across the hall. Same size, but decorated differently. I thought she should have input on any changes." They moved to the second bedroom, where Emma stood uncertainly in the center of a space decorated in soft greens and yellows. A twin bed with a canopy sat beneath windows that offered another stunning view of the city. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with picture books and chapter books and art supplies. "It's like a princess room," Lily breathed, and for the first time since they'd arrived, Emma's face brightened slightly. "Do you like books?" Emma asked, her voice still quiet but less guarded. "I love books. Daddy reads to me every night. Do you have favorite ones?" Emma nodded and moved to the bookshelf, pulling out a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. "This one. I've read it so many times the pages are falling out. That's one of mine too. Daddy does all the voices for the wild things. He makes them sound really scary but also friendly." Marcus caught Victoria's eye over the girls' heads. She was watching Emma with an expression. He recognized the fierce protectiveness of someone who would do anything to see a child smile, to hear them laugh, to know they felt safe and loved. "Emma," Victoria said gently, "would you like to show Lily some of your other favorite books?" It was permission and encouragement rolled into one. Emma nodded and began pulling volumes from the shelf, her movements becoming more animated as she shared her small treasures with someone who seemed genuinely interested. Marcus and Victoria stepped back into the hallway, giving the girls space to discover each other. "She's different with Lily," Victoria said quietly. "I haven't seen her this engaged with another child. Ever, really. Lily has that effect on people. She makes everything seem possible somehow." Victoria looked at him directly for the first time since they'd arrived. "Even this? This arrangement?" Marcus considered the question. 2 days ago, he'd been facing eviction with no prospects and no options. Now he was standing in an apartment that cost more per month than he'd made in the past year, watching his daughter make friends with a little girl who'd been hurt by the world, but was still brave enough to share her favorite books. "Especially this," he said. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the girls' voices from the bedroom. Lily's animated storytelling, mixing with Emma's quieter responses. Two children building a bridge between their different worlds. "There's something else," Victoria said finally. "Something I didn't mention in the interview." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Here, it was the catch. The complication that would make this too good to be true. I don't know how to be around children. I adopted Emma because she needed a home, and I needed someone, but I work 18-hour days, and I've never had a family, and I don't know what I'm doing." Her voice was carefully controlled, but Marcus heard the vulnerability underneath. Victoria Sterling, who commanded boardrooms and built empires, was admitting that a 5-year-old girl terrified her more than any business negotiation ever could. "You love her," Marcus said simply. "Yes, but love isn't enough, is it? She needs stability, routine, someone who knows how to braid hair and pack school lunches, and remember that green vegetables matter more than stock portfolios." Marcus thought about the learning curve of single parenthood, about all the things he'd had to figure out, by trial and error. You learn as you go. That's what all parents do. Real parents have 9 months to prepare. I had a 3-week adoption process, and a child who'd already been through too much. From the bedroom came the sound of giggles, Emma's high, surprised laugh mixing with Lily's familiar chortle. Both adults turned toward the sound, drawn by something they'd both been missing without quite realizing it. "She's laughing," Victoria said, wonder in her voice. "Lily's good at making people laugh. I can't remember the last time Emma laughed like that. Happy. Unguarded." Marcus watched Victoria's face as she listened to the children, saw how the sound of Emma's joy transformed her, softened the sharp edges, brought light to her eyes, made her look less like a CEO and more like a mother who'd found her child's missing piece. "This could work," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "I think it could." 3 weeks into their new life, Marcus learned that wealth couldn't cushion every kind of falling. Emma had been doing better, small improvements that felt like victories. She'd started eating breakfast without prompting. She'd asked Marcus to read her a story before bed. She'd even laughed at Lily's impression of their doorman, Mr. Peterson, who spoke in whispers and treated the lobby like a library. But trauma, Marcus was learning, didn't heal in straight lines. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Victoria had left for a 3-day trip to oversee a project in Seattle, kissing Emma's forehead and promising to bring back something special from Pike Place Market. The goodbye had been harder than usual, Emma clinging to Victoria's suit jacket with small fists, making her promise to call every night. Marcus had expected the adjustment to be difficult. What he hadn't expected was to find Emma at 2 in the morning, sitting in the hallway outside her bedroom, fully dressed, and clutching a small suitcase he'd never seen before. "Emma?" He crouched down to her level, careful to keep his voice gentle. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Her face was streaked with tears, but her expression was determined in the way that only frightened children could manage. "I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To go." She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "You can take me back now. Victoria's gone, so you don't have to pretend anymore." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He sank to the floor beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but far enough away not to crowd her. "Emma, honey. Nobody's taking you anywhere. This is your home." "No, it's not." Her voice was matter-of-fact, resigned. "They always send me back when the grown-ups leave. The Johnsons did. And the Millers. They said I was too hard, too sad. Victoria's probably never coming back either." Marcus felt his heart break for this little girl, who'd learned to pack her own bag, who'd taught herself that love was temporary, and homes were just stops between disappointments. Victoria is coming back, he said quietly. She'll be home Thursday night. And she's not sending you anywhere. Emma shook her head, the gesture heartbreakingly adult. You don't understand. I heard them talking, the social workers. They said I was difficult to place. That means nobody wants to keep me. The social workers were wrong. No, they weren't. Emma's voice was small but fierce. I know what I am. I'm too quiet and I have bad dreams and I don't like it when people touch me, and I get scared when grown-ups leave. The Millers said I was broken. Marcus wanted to find the Millers and explain exactly what he thought of adults who would say such things to a child. Instead, he focused on the little girl in front of him, trying to find words that could reach past years of hurt and disappointment. Can I tell you something about being broken? Emma looked at him suspiciously, but nodded. When Lily's mom left us, I thought I was broken too. I cried every night after Lily went to sleep. I forgot to eat meals. I couldn't figure out how to braid her hair, or pack her lunch, or help her with homework. I felt like I was failing at the most important job I'd ever had. Emma wiped her nose again, listening despite herself. But you know what I learned? Sometimes, being broken just means you're still growing. Like when you break your arm and it heals stronger than it was before. Or when you break open a seed and a flower grows out. That's different, Emma whispered. You weren't too hard for people to love. Marcus thought about all the ways life had taught this 5-year-old girl that she was too much, too difficult, too damaged for anyone to want permanently. He thought about his own daughter, sleeping peacefully in the next room, secure in the knowledge that Daddy would always come back, would always choose her, would always fight for her. Emma, look at me. He waited until her dark eyes met his. You are not too hard to love. You are not too broken to keep. You are exactly the right amount of everything, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. Then why does everyone leave? Because they weren't your real family. They were just practice. Practice for when the right people came along. Emma considered this, her small fingers picking at the handle of her suitcase. Are you the right people? Marcus felt the weight of the question, the trust and terror wrapped up in those few words. This little girl was asking him to promise something that adults had broken before, asking him to be something that others had failed to be. Yes, he said simply. We're your real family now. Me and Lily and Victoria. And real families don't send each other away when things get hard. How do you know? Because I've been watching Victoria with you for 3 weeks, and I've never seen anyone love someone the way she loves you. She chose you, Emma. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because she knew you belonged together. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, she really went to Seattle? She didn't just go away? She really went to Seattle. For work. And she's really coming home Thursday. Want to see the flight confirmation on my phone? Emma nodded, and Marcus pulled up Victoria's travel itinerary, showing her the return flight details. Emma studied the screen with the intensity of someone who'd learned to verify adult promises. She called tonight, Emma said quietly. Before bed. She said she missed me. I bet she did. I bet she's missing you right now. For the first time since he'd found her in the hallway, Emma's grip on the suitcase loosened slightly. Do you think maybe I don't need to pack tonight? I think you're safe to unpack. But if you want to keep the suitcase in your room, that's okay too. Sometimes it takes a while to feel safe enough to put all your things away. Emma nodded, understanding that he got it. That feeling secure wasn't something you could force. That trust was built in small moments and careful choices. Marcus? Her voice was very small. Could you stay until I fall asleep? Sometimes, the bad dreams come when I'm alone. Of course. Marcus stood and offered her his hand. Come on, let's get you back to bed. Emma took his hand the first time she'd voluntarily made physical contact with him and let him lead her back to her room. She kept the suitcase beside her bed, but changed back into her pajamas. Marcus sat in the chair beside her bed, close enough that she could see him, but far enough away that she didn't feel crowded. Marcus? Her voice was drowsy now, the emotional exhaustion of the evening catching up with her. "Yeah, sweetheart? When Victoria comes home, will you tell her I was scared? Will you tell her I'm sorry I thought she might not come back?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You don't need to apologize for being scared, Emma. Scared feelings are okay. Victoria will understand." "Okay." Emma pulled her blanket up to her chin, her eyes already drifting closed. "Will you tell Lily? Will you tell her I'm glad she's my sister now? I'll tell her. She'll be glad to hear it." Emma smiled a small, sleepy smile that transformed her face completely. "Good. Because sisters don't send each other away, right?" "Never," Marcus promised. "Sisters are forever." He stayed in the chair until her breathing deepened and evened out, until he was sure the bad dreams wouldn't come tonight. Then he quietly made his way to the living room, where he called Victoria's hotel room, despite the late hour. She answered on the first ring, her voice alert despite the time difference. "Marcus? Is everything okay?" He told her about finding Emma in the hallway, about the suitcase and the tears and the conversation that followed. He heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath, could imagine her pacing the hotel room as she processed what her daughter had been going through. "She thought I'd left her," Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. "She thought I was like all the others. She's 5 years old, Victoria. She's been abandoned by people who were supposed to protect her. Of course, she's scared when you leave. But she's also learning that you come back. That's the difference. I should have prepared her better. I should have—" "You should have done exactly what you did," Marcus interrupted gently. "You kissed her goodbye, and promised to bring her something special, and told her you'd call every night. You did everything right. The fear isn't about you, it's about what happened to her before you." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "She's really okay now?" "She's asleep. And she asked me to tell you that she's sorry, she was scared, and she's glad Lily is her sister." Marcus heard Victoria's breath catch, heard her trying not to cry. "She said that? About Lily being her sister?" "She did. I think tonight was hard. But it was also healing, maybe. She let me help her. She asked me to stay until she fell asleep. She held my hand. Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For knowing what to say. For being there when I couldn't be." "That's what families do," Marcus said. "We take turns being strong for each other." There was a long pause, and when Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "Is that what we are? A family?" Marcus looked around the apartment at Lily's shoes, kicked off by the door, at Emma's art projects covering the refrigerator, at the life they were building together in this space, high above the city. "Yeah," he said. "I think that's exactly what we are." The piano arrived on a Thursday morning in October, 6 months after Marcus and Lily had moved into the tower that touched the clouds. It came with 4 men in matching uniforms, and a freight elevator Marcus didn't know existed, appearing in Victoria's penthouse, like something from a fairy tale. Emma found it first. "Victoria." Her voice carried through the apartment with an excitement Marcus had learned to treasure. "Victoria, come look." Marcus was in the kitchen making lunch when he heard the commotion. Through the connecting door between their apartments, installed 3 months ago, when the boundaries between their separate living spaces had started feeling artificial, he could see Emma standing in Victoria's living room, her small hands pressed to her mouth in wonder. The piano was magnificent. A baby grand in polished black, its surface reflecting the afternoon light, streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It dominated the space where Victoria's glass coffee table used to be, transforming the sterile perfection of her living room into something warmer, more alive. Victoria emerged from her home office, still wearing her morning meeting attire, but with her hair slightly mussed and her expression soft in a way that had become more frequent lately. "Do you like it?" she asked Emma, though she was looking at Marcus over the little girl's head. Emma nodded so vigorously her ponytail bounced. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Does it work? Can you play it?" "I don't know how," Victoria said. "I bought it for you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emma's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like she had that first night, overwhelmed by the magnitude of someone caring enough to notice what she wanted. For me? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. But it's so expensive. And big. And what if I'm not good at it? Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, her expensive skirt spreading across the hardwood floor. Do you remember what you told me last week? About hearing music in your dreams? Emma nodded. She'd started sharing more about her inner world lately. Tentative revelations about dreams where she could fly, about imaginary friends who played invisible instruments, about music she heard in the rain against their windows. I thought maybe you'd like to learn to play the music you hear, Victoria continued. And if you decide you don't like it, that's okay too. But I wanted you to have the chance to try. Emma looked from Victoria to the piano and back again, processing this gift that was so much bigger than a toy or a book, or the small treasures adults usually gave children. Marcus, she said, suddenly, turning to him with the seriousness that sometimes made her seem much older than 6. Do you think I could really learn? Do you think my fingers are smart enough? Marcus felt his chest tighten with love for this little girl, who still questioned whether she deserved beautiful things. Emma, your fingers built that entire city out of Legos last week. I think they're smart enough for anything you want to teach them. What about the neighbors? Emma was thinking practically now, working through the logistics. Won't they be mad if I make noise? The soundproofing is excellent, Victoria said with the kind of authority that came from owning the building. And even if it wasn't, making music isn't noise. It's joy made audible. Emma approached the piano slowly, reverently. She touched one key with her index finger, and the single note rang out clear and true in the vast space. Her face lit up with wonder. It sounds like starlight, she breathed. Lily appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound and the excitement. Whoa! Emma! Is that yours? Victoria gave it to me, Emma said, still touching keys one at a time, listening to each note, like it held secrets. Do you want to try? Can I? Lily looked to Victoria for permission. Of course. It's Emma's piano, but pianos are meant to be shared. The girls sat side by side on the bench, taking turns pressing keys and giggling at the sounds they made. Their laughter mixed with the random notes, creating a symphony of childhood joy that filled the space completely. Marcus found himself standing next to Victoria, both of them watching their daughters discover music together. This is incredible, he said quietly. The piano, I mean. But also, this, watching them be happy. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Victoria admitted. For something to go wrong. For someone to realize I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. That's the secret of parenting, we're all making it up as we go along. Victoria smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. Sarah found a teacher. Mrs. Chen, no relation to you. Apparently. She's been teaching children for 30 years. She can start lessons next week if Emma wants. Emma's going to love that. She's been humming constantly lately. I think music has been trying to get out of her for a while. They watched as the girls attempted a duet, Lily playing random keys in the lower register, while Emma picked out something that almost sounded like a melody in the higher octaves. It was chaotic and beautiful and perfectly them. Marcus. Victoria's voice was hesitant, uncertain. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy here? Really happy. Not just grateful for the job happy. Marcus considered the question. 6 months ago, happiness had seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. Now, watching his daughter share music with her sister, living in a space filled with light and laughter and possibility, happiness felt as natural as breathing. Yeah, he said. I'm really happy. Are you? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her eyes on the girls at the piano. I used to think happiness was something that happened to other people. That I was built for success, not joy. But watching Emma laugh, seeing her trust us, having all of us here together, I think maybe I was wrong. Emma struck a particularly beautiful chord, and both girls gasped in delight. The sound seemed to hang in the air between Marcus and Victoria, perfect and fleeting. "There's something else," Victoria said, her voice so low he almost missed it. "Something I need to tell you." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. In his experience, conversations that started like that rarely went well. "The board has been pressuring me to travel more. International expansion, new markets, projects that would keep me away for weeks at a time." The implications hit him immediately. More time, as Emma's primary caregiver, more responsibility, more blurred lines between employee and family member. "Okay," he said carefully. "I've been turning down most of the opportunities, sending vice presidents instead of going myself. The board thinks I'm losing my edge." Marcus waited, sensing there was more. "They're not wrong. I am losing my edge. At least, the edge that made me willing to sacrifice everything for the company. I don't want to miss Emma's first piano recital for a merger in Singapore. I don't want to be in Tokyo when she loses her first tooth." Victoria turned to face him fully, her expression vulnerable and determined at the same time. "I want to be present. Here. Part of this life we're building. But I need to know, would that be okay with you? If I were around more, if the lines between your job and our arrangement got even blurrier than they already are?" Marcus looked at her, really looked. Victoria Sterling, who'd built an empire from nothing, who commanded respect in boardrooms across the world, was asking his permission to be a more active presence in her own home. The question revealed everything about how carefully she'd been trying to respect boundaries, how much she valued what they'd built together. "Victoria," he said gently, "you don't need my permission to be present in Emma's life. She's your daughter. But you've been taking care of her. Taking care of all of us, really. I don't want to disrupt the routines you've established, the trust you've built with her." From the piano came the sound of Emma attempting to teach Lily a simple melody, her voice patient and encouraging. "No. Like this, Lily. Press it softer, like you're petting a cat. I think," Marcus said, watching their daughters, "that Emma has enough love for all of us. And I think we're all better when we're together." Victoria's smile was radiant. "So, you wouldn't mind if I turned down the Singapore merger to stay home and listen to piano lessons? I think the Singapore merger can wait." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long golden rectangles across the piano, and the girls who were still discovering the magic of making music together. The sound filled the penthouse, spilled down through the connected apartments, reached into corners that had been silent for too long. Marcus realized that somewhere in the past 6 months, without quite noticing when it happened, this had stopped being a job and started being a life. The boundaries between employee and family member hadn't just blurred, they'd dissolved entirely, replaced by something much more real and infinitely more precious. "Marcus?" Emma called from the piano. "Victoria? Come try this. We figured out how to make it sound like rain." They walked over together, and Emma scooted over to make room on the bench. The four of them crowded around the piano, their hands finding different keys, creating something that wasn't quite music but was absolutely beautiful. In the golden light of the afternoon, surrounded by the sound of laughter and random piano notes and the city humming far below, Marcus understood that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not planned, but real and present, and worth everything they'd all sacrificed to get here. The music they made together rose and filled the space, and somewhere in its imperfect harmony, a family that had been built from need and circumstance became something that would endure long after the last note faded away. 2 years later, Victoria Sterling learned that the most important negotiations didn't happen in boardrooms. They happened at kitchen tables at 7 in the morning, with 2 little girls arguing over the last blueberry muffin, while piano scales drifted from the living room where Emma practiced before school. They happened in grocery store aisles when Lily insisted they needed every color of bell pepper, because rainbows make food taste better. They happened in the quiet moments after bedtime stories, when the apartment finally settled into silence and the adults could breathe again. This particular negotiation was taking place on the roof garden, 30 floors above the city, where Marcus had convinced the building's landscaping crew to let him plant a small vegetable patch. Emma and Lily were covered in dirt, arguing about whether tomatoes were fruits or vegetables, while Victoria sat on a bench, trying to pretend she wasn't checking emails on her phone. Victoria. Emma's voice carried the patience of an 8-year-old who'd become accustomed to redirecting distracted adults. You promised you'd help us plant the sunflowers. Victoria looked up from her screen, where a message from the Singapore office waited for her response. The merger she'd postponed 2 years ago was back on the table, bigger and more lucrative than ever. The kind of opportunity that could cement Sterling Dynamics as a global leader. The kind of opportunity that would require 6 months of travel, countless late-night calls, and the kind of focus that had once defined her entire existence. Sorry, sweetheart. She slipped the phone into her pocket and joined the girls in their patch of earth. Show me where you want them. Emma had grown taller, her face losing some of its sharp wariness and gaining the rounded confidence of a child who'd learned she was safe. Her piano playing had progressed to the point where she could fill their home with Chopin and Mozart, but she still preferred the simple melodies she composed herself, songs about rainstorms and flying dreams, and families that stayed together. Lily, now 8, and somehow both more responsible and more mischievous than before, had appointed herself Emma's protector and co-conspirator. They moved through the world like a matched set, finishing each other's sentences, and sharing secrets in the shorthand that only siblings understood. The sunflowers should go here, Emma said, marking a spot with her muddy finger. So they can see the whole city when they grow up, like we can from our windows. Victoria knelt in the dirt, not caring that her designer jeans would be ruined, and helped Emma press the seeds into the soil. Her phone buzzed against her hip. Singapore again, probably. Or maybe London, or any of the dozen international markets that required her attention. She ignored it. Mom, Lily said. The word still new enough that Victoria felt her heart skip every time she heard it. Marcus says we can have a garden party when the sunflowers bloom. Can we invite Mrs. Chen? She's been teaching Emma this really pretty song about gardens. Victoria looked across the roof to where Marcus was helping a group of elderly residents from the building harvest herbs they'd planted in the spring. He'd become something of a neighborhood favorite over the past 2 years. The kind of person who remembered everyone's names and never forgot to ask about their grandchildren, or their arthritis, or their latest doctor's appointment. He'd also become something she'd never expected to find. Her partner in every sense that mattered. Of course, we can invite Mrs. Chen, Victoria said, and anyone else you'd like. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she pulled it out and turned it off completely. Everything okay? Marcus appeared beside them, his hands dirty from replanting Mrs. Patterson's tomatoes. Singapore, Victoria said, as if that explained everything. In their household, it did. Singapore had become shorthand for the life she used to live, the woman she used to be, the choices that pulled her away from this rooftop, and these children, and the man who'd taught her that success could be measured in things other than stock prices and profit margins. Marcus nodded, understanding without explanation. The girls want to show you something. They've been working on it all week. Emma and Lily exchanged a look, the kind of conspiratorial glance that usually meant Victoria was about to be presented with a handmade gift, a performance, or a proposal for a pet they definitely couldn't have. It's a surprise, Lily announced. But you have to close your eyes. Victoria obediently closed her eyes, allowing herself to be led across the rooftop to what she assumed was their latest creation. The city sounds drifted up from below traffic and construction, and the constant hum of 8 million people building their lives, but up here, surrounded by plants and children, and the man who'd helped her discover what family felt like, the noise felt distant and harmless. Okay, Emma said. You can look. Victoria opened her eyes to find herself standing in front of a small patch of earth where someone had arranged river stones to spell out words. Victoria's garden. We made you your own space, Emma explained, bouncing slightly on her toes. For flowers or vegetables or whatever you want. Marcus helped us find the stones, but we arranged them ourselves. And look. Lily pointed to a small wooden sign stuck in the earth nearby. Emma painted this. The sign read, "Home is where your people are," in Emma's careful 8-year-old script, decorated with painted sunflowers and what Victoria thought might be musical notes. Victoria felt her throat close with emotion. 2 years ago, she'd lived alone in a penthouse that looked like a magazine spread, surrounded by things that impressed visitors and reflected her success. Now she was standing on a rooftop in dirty jeans, looking at a patch of earth that 2 little girls had claimed for her, and she'd never felt wealthier in her life. "It's perfect," she managed to say. "It's the most beautiful garden I've ever seen." "Even though nothing's planted yet?" Emma asked. "Especially because nothing's planted yet. That means it's full of possibilities." Marcus was watching her with the expression she'd come to recognize as his way of checking in, making sure she was okay, offering support without words. It was one of 1,000 small kindnesses he'd brought into their life. The way he remembered everyone's preferences for breakfast, how he could calm Emma's nightmares with the right story, the way he'd learned to read Victoria's moods, and offer exactly what she needed, without her having to ask. "There's something else," Emma said, suddenly serious. "A question we want to ask you." Victoria's heart rate picked up slightly. In her experience, when children presented gifts before asking questions, the questions were usually significant. "Okay. What's the question?" Emma and Lily looked at each other, then at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "We want to know," Emma said carefully, "if we can call you Mom for real. Not just sometimes, but all the time." "Like officially," Lily added. Emma looked it up. "You can adopt someone, even if they're already your family. There are papers and everything." Victoria felt the world tilt slightly, the way it had the day she'd first brought Emma home. The day Marcus and Lily had moved into their lives, all the moments when her carefully constructed existence had been rearranged by love. "You want me to adopt you too, Lily?" "If that's okay," Lily said, suddenly shy. "I know you're not my first mom, but you're my real mom now. The mom who makes sure I practice piano and helps with math, homework, and remembers that I don't like mustard on my sandwiches. And who bought us the most beautiful piano in the world," Emma added. "And who reads us stories even when she's tired from work, and who lets us plant gardens on the roof." Victoria looked at Marcus over their daughters' heads. "And what do you think about this idea?" His smile was soft, certain. "I think families should make themselves official when they're ready. And I think we've been ready for a while." "So, you'd be okay with me adopting Lily?" "Victoria, you've been her mother in every way that matters for 2 years. The paperwork is just catching up to reality." The city stretched out around them, endless and full of possibility. Somewhere in the buildings below, people were making deals, and building empires, and measuring their worth in numbers on spreadsheets. Victoria had done all of that. Had built something impressive and profitable and important. But standing on this rooftop with a man who'd taught her what partnership meant, and 2 little girls who'd taught her what love could build, she understood that she'd never created anything as valuable as this moment, this choice, this family that had grown from need into something unshakable. "Yes," she said, pulling both girls into her arms. "Yes, to the adoption. Yes, to being your official mom. Yes, to all of it." The celebration that followed was pure chaos. Lily whooping with joy, Emma crying happy tears, Marcus laughing as he was pulled into their group hug. They probably looked ridiculous, 4 people covered in garden dirt, standing in a patch of sunflowers that hadn't grown yet, but Victoria had never felt more dignified in her life. Her phone stayed off for the rest of the day. Singapore would have to wait. The evening found them in their usual configuration. Emma at the piano playing her latest composition, Lily curled in Marcus's lap listening, with the attention she gave to all her sister's performances, Victoria reviewing school forms at the kitchen table. Not adoption papers, not yet. But permission slips for field trips and camp applications, and all the mundane paperwork that came with raising children who believed the world was full of adventures waiting to happen. "Victoria," Emma called from the piano bench. "I finished the song about the garden. Do you want to hear it?" "I'd love to." The melody that filled their home was simple and sweet, the kind of song that would have been forgotten in a week if it had come from anywhere else. But this song came from Emma's heart, from her understanding of what they'd built together, and it settled into the walls of their home like something that would last forever. Marcus appeared beside Victoria's chair, setting a cup of tea at her elbow and resting his hand on her shoulder. It was a casual gesture, comfortable and unconscious, the kind of touch that spoke of shared mornings and quiet evenings and 1,000 small intimacies that had nothing to do with contracts or employment arrangements. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. His voice meant only for her. Victoria looked around their home at Emma's sheet music scattered across the piano, at Lily's latest art project covering half the refrigerator, at the life they'd built from an impossible arrangement between two people who'd both been drowning in their own ways. "None," she said, and meant it completely. Outside their windows, the city glittered with the dreams of 8 million people, each one reaching for something better, something more, something that would finally fill the hollow spaces in their lives. Victoria had spent years in those streets, climbing higher and higher, thinking elevation was the same as enlightenment. Now she knew better. Now she knew that home wasn't about how high you could rise, but about who was waiting when you came back down to earth. The music drifted through their apartment, simple and perfect, carrying with it the sound of a family that had chosen each other against all odds and built something beautiful in the space between what they'd lost and what they'd found. In the morning, there would be phone calls to return and meetings to attend, and the endless demands of an empire that required her attention. But tonight, there was piano music and bedtime stories, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that some negotiations, the ones that mattered most, had already been won. The sound of home is different for everyone, but for Victoria Sterling, it would always be the melody of a little girl's song, drifting through rooms filled with love, echoing off windows that looked down on a city where she'd once been lost, but up toward a sky full of stars that had finally shown her the way back to herself. If you enjoy this story, I want you to click the subscribe button for more stories like this. This will mean a lot for the channel. Thank you.